Welcome to The Med Show. I'm Dr. Rami Al-Bahri, your host today. At The Med Show, we dive into the stories, expertise of extraordinary people in medicine, dentistry, and entrepreneurship. Our mission is to make you more informed and a sharper critical thinker. Today, we welcome Professor Khalil Ramadi, an MIT graduate and an Assistant Professor of Bioengineering at NYUAD, and the Director of Translational Medical Device Lab at NYU. Thank you for coming on our show today. All right, tell me a little bit about yourself. It's a very interesting title. Tell me where does it all start from?
Sure, and I obviously want to thank you, Rami, first for having me on. It really is a pleasure to be here.
Of course.
And have this opportunity to really just chat about sort of our respective expertise and some of the work that we do in lab. So as you've mentioned in your very kind introduction, I'm a professor here of bioengineering at NYU Abu Dhabi. My lab focuses on neuro-engineering and translational medicine, which basically means that we build hardware solutions to try to address unmet clinical needs. Very broad sort of scope. We really start by focusing on what we think are problems in healthcare, either something that we cannot present adequate treatment for, a lack of a tool for diagnostics or screening, and we try to leverage really a multidisciplinary team towards trying to address that problem.
All right. Yeah, that's a very good explanation. So where did it all start? You were born and raised here, or no, you were raised here, right?
Yeah,
In
so not too far away from here.
Okay.
I went to school in Al-Ain, graduated some time ago. Al-Ain, both Ainawis, that's right. From the desert.
Right.
And then moved to the States for college. I went to Penn State for my undergrad. I studied mechanical engineering and biomedical engineering, and then moved up to Boston to go to graduate school at MIT.
That's pretty incredible.
It was a fantastic experience, honestly. At MIT, I was part of this kind of unusual program called the Health Sciences and Technology PhD program, which is this blend between MIT and Harvard Medical School. And what it does is basically try to train engineers that are knowledgeable about the clinic as well. And so in addition to our engineering coursework, we took some medical school courses with the MDs. We asked a lot dumber questions than the MDs did. We also spent some time in the hospitals, kind of pretending to be medical students for like 3 months at a time, which was really
lab coats.
We wore lab coats. My ID said medical student. And for the first patient, she was like, "What do you want to be when you graduate as a doctor?" And I had to sit down and explain to her that, hey, I'm really a PhD student, but I'm here.
Oh, so you're not a real doctor.
I'm not a real doctor.
Just like a dentist.
I'm just.
Okay then.
But really what that program, I think, really taught me was there's plenty of really cool engineering that happens that doesn't get translated and doesn't have an impact because where it goes in the clinic is not really clear. And so really that has informed a lot of what we do in lab now in terms of really focusing an equal amount on, okay, let's do cool engineering, let's use technology, let's build cool devices, but at the same time, let's keep an eye on why we're even doing this in the first place.
Well, that brings to another trend we've been hearing a lot. It's like hacking your body, right? So it's like, okay, how can we hack our body to become the best version of ourselves? But through science, and through engineering.
I mean, because it's actually an interesting point. Like when you talk about hacking your body, everyone has their own tricks. People have been doing it for centuries. Right. And we have Western medicine, more modern medicine that has come up in the last maybe 100, 200 years, which tries to explain why things work. But there's plenty of remedies out there that have been around for ages and we know work, but we just don't know why. And so it is an interesting question in medicine when you think about new therapies or new treatment is how much do you need to understand it versus how much is good enough just because it has an effect and makes patients feel better at the end of the day.
Right, absolutely. Going back to MIT, it's a pretty incredible school. I think it's one of the best engineering schools, that and probably Caltech. How was the application process? I'm just curious because I feel like it'll be so intense, especially for a PhD.
So I'll let you in on a little secret. When I was applying to graduate school, they usually recommend apply to some top programs, some that you'd call the middle, and some backup. And I won't name names about who is in each bucket in my case. But I will tell you that in my case, I essentially got into my top choice, which was MIT, none in the middle, and my backup. So you have this bimodal distribution, which shows you that admissions at the end of the day is as much hard work as it is luck. So
yeah. That tends to happen. But yeah, I guess everybody has their backups and yeah. Well, you still didn't answer the question.
Which one?
How did you get in?
How did I get in?
I'm sure a lot of people are curious.
It's hard work plus luck. Those are the two things I'll say.
Okay. So you gotta have a really high GPA.
I think
do letter recommendations actually help?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You need people to say nice things about you.
And did you do research while you were in Penn State?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I think look, at the end of the day, I sit on the other side now when I evaluate these PhD applications, and at the end of the day, you just want a complete person, right? You don't want someone to bullshit you along the way of saying I want this when it kind of is clear they don't really want that.
Right.
You want someone who says I really want to work on cancer and has the experience to back it. Like, not only do they say they want to work on it, they've actually worked on it. Or they've worked in
least
clinics,
volunteered.
right? Like something to show that the passion that you state is really what is there. And obviously, yes, high GPA and all that good stuff. Yeah.
So you are the director in the Translational Medical Device Lab. What is that exactly? What's that lab exactly?
So we actually just launched here at Abu Dhabi in September a new center, which I'm one of the co-directors for, which is called the Center for Translational Medical Devices. And really what we are trying to do is become the point of contact for any medical device innovation in the Gulf and MENA. Because if you think about traditionally, there's only a few big players that really do medical device innovation. And
what are they?
You have your Medtronic, Boston Scientific. Like these are all.
Yeah, but are they in the Gulf? Are they based in the Gulf?
No, none of them.
Yeah.
If they have offices in the Gulf, it's for sales.
It's for sales, exactly.
So really, I think what a lot of people are interested in the Gulf is of trying to create this ecosystem of health innovation. And health innovation means a lot of different things. You can do drug development, you can do pharma, you can do biotech. And what we want to sort of focus on is the medical device space. That really hasn't been done in the Gulf before. And what our goal is to basically create a pipeline by which we have novel medical device technologies that are completely home brewed here. And that we can spin out and set up companies to commercialize here as well.
Amazing. So what hospitals are you collaborating with in terms of these translational researchers?
We have quite a few here. I will say that I think the most important thing with a clinical collaboration is finding the individual. And so we really...
So that's more important than the actual facility?
I would say so, right? I mean, I think collaborations take different shapes and forms. Sometimes you need a clinical trial unit. And so that's like a very firm thing that you need a hospital to have. Sometimes they need to have the infrastructure to be able to even run these sort of trials. And then sometimes you just need doctors and clinicians who are willing to take time out of their day for a job that in which they are not really compensated for, in terms of being able to contribute to research, to guide us as sort of the technologists on what exactly needs to be developed. So we have some really good collaborators at Cleveland Clinic here in Abu Dhabi, and we're growing a couple more with Tawam Hospital and Al-Ain, as well as Sheikh Shakhbout here in Abu Dhabi as well.
Yeah, I did hear that you had a collaboration with we had episode 3, Dr. Shadi.
Yes.
You did have a collaboration with Tawam, with him.
That was actually a fantastic example because that one was actually a student senior design project.
Oh, nice.
And so these were like engineers that got firsthand exposure to what the clinic is, what doctors really face in
just
terms
like you
of
did
the
at Harvard.
issues. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do for a lot of the students here is, recreate that environment.
That's amazing. You did something called like MIT Hacking Medicine, which is kind of like a club or an association at MIT. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, those are the two hats I wore at MIT. And by day, I was a PhD student and I did research on brain implants. And then by night, I was part of this essentially student group, but very unusual student group that focuses on running hackathons and innovation workshops, ultimately with the goal of trying to encourage people to become more involved in health innovation and health entrepreneurship. And so, very broadly defined, the way these events would be run is trying to combine a variety of different backgrounds who we traditionally would not think of as experts in healthcare. So computer scientists, designers, patients, patient advocacy groups, lawyers, basically a variety of different disciplines, because at the end of the day, innovating in healthcare is actually really difficult.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, it was tremendously rewarding. I think it informed a lot of how we do. It also was extremely successful. So we've had probably 60 plus companies come out of all these events now. These companies have raised, I don't know, 300-400 million.
Anything that I would be aware of?
Probably the biggest success story is a company called PillPack. PillPack started from a hackathon in 2013. And all they did was try to tackle the problem of medication adherence, of why do people not take their medicines. And what they did is they focused on specifically patients who take 3 or more meds, each one with a different schedule. And what they did is they put it on a ticker tape format, so that basically you have each little pouch labeled with the time and the date, and it has a bunch of medicines. And all that you have to do as a patient is just take everything in that pouch at that time. And then the next one has the next time. They just redesigned the process.
So simple, but
nothing in terms of new drugs, nothing like that. And so they were acquired by Amazon for close to $1 billion.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is insane. That is insane. I wish I went to MIT.
Right. Well, I wish I was part of PillPack.
All right. So you're also a mentor at Sandbox, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So I think part of being involved in the entrepreneurship space is being able to also mentor younger startups and teams to try to rethink through their ideas. So Sandbox is a fantastic program that is actually based at MIT. I was a participant in the Sandbox program for some ideas that I had with some classmates at the time.
Tell me one of those ideas.
One of those ideas? Well, I'll tell you. It's actually on the same theme of medication adherence. The idea that we had at the time was, well, you have a child. You'll relate to this. So how do we give medicines to children?
In the
when they're not that sick, the oral route.
We hold them down and shove it in their mouth?
Kind of, right? And the way that we do it is usually a liquid form, and it's usually viscous.
Yeah.
Usually doesn't taste good. And
That's right.
the classic unit of measure for these medicines is tablespoons.
Right.
Have you opened your drawer and seen the
there's
variety?
so many different sizes.
That's not a standard unit of measurement. And so we started looking into this, and this is like a major problem. There are over 200,000 ER admissions for children who overdose on Tylenol in the US every year.
No way.
Just because it's difficult
That's a
to
crazy
measure.
statistic.
And especially when you think about it as like a crying child at 3 o'clock in the morning and a parent who just wants to give them something and do well, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And so what we had designed was basically a new way of trying to standardize this dosing, easier than a syringe and a spoon, and more accurate than both. And that went somewhat far, but at some point we got a patent out of it. We're kind of happy, but there were some issues in terms of I would say the uptake and the form factor. The physics didn't quite work out.
Ah, okay. All right, so you put it on hold, or you kind of like moved on?
On hold in perpetuity. If somebody wants to take it up, I'm more than happy.
All right,
Again,
all right. So anybody willing to buy this for $1 billion?
Billion.
All right, and now, well, you participated in it, and then now you're a fellow.
Yes. So what that means is
What does that entail?
So you go from sort of being a participant to a fellow, which is basically like a senior student / trainee who is part of the program and actively mentors many teams. And then now that I'm, peripherally related with MIT still as an affiliate, but don't have the bandwidth to do what a fellow can do, I volunteer to mentor a few teams every semester.
All right. That's
and
nice.
The really cool thing about that, I'll just say, is that I go into those meetings and I tell them the first time, I was like, I don't tell you what to do. I will just ask stupid questions and you will educate me. And if you don't know how to answer the questions, maybe you should go and learn how to do them. So it's a really fun role to be a mentor.
That's a nice approach. Yeah. All right. So then that was your whole experience at MIT, and then you decided to move back to the UAE.
Yeah.
And you got a faculty position or a professor position at NYUAD. Why did you move back?
I think some things in life are like right place, right time.
Okay.
And I had come to NYU actually through hacking medicine.
Interesting.
For
Okay.
a couple of visits for some hackathons that we were running here or that we were helping with. And one thing led to the other. I ended up looking and seeing what the lab facilities were like. I ended up meeting some of the other faculty. You really realize it's just a fantastic environment to do research in. It has all the sort of cool toys you'd need to actually build and characterize.
Yeah, I've seen those
technologies.
toys.
They are fantastic toys. We're really fortunate to have them.
Yeah.
They also, it's a smaller institution, but at the same time, you have this wonderful concentration of different disciplines, which again were very much informed by how hacking medicine model is in terms of bringing these disciplines together. And then on top of that, it was an opportunity to be a part of something that's growing. Right, this was a university which is still in its infancy, where still new programs are being spun out, and I would at the time basically be the first full-time bioengineering faculty.
Wow.
So that was really cool, right? To be able to have an impact in terms of contributing to an institution, which, for example, now we're doing through the center, on students in terms of opening new avenues of research they can get involved with, and being able to teach and tailor different types of courses for what I think students need to know.
Amazing. Yeah, that seems like the best of both worlds. So now going back to research, how does, you did some research in the States and you've been doing research here. Is there any differences in policies, in the way things are run here? Are there more green lights here than there are in the States, or is the States more of free-running research facilities?
I think honestly, the UAE does a good job of not adding red tape where it doesn't need to be.
Okay.
I think red tape isn't there because it exists. It's there because something doesn't exist. And I'll give you an example. This is something that, you say you want to do, you want to order a radioactive substance for some sort of experiment in lab. In most institutions in the States, it's pretty established research environment. You can go ahead. There's a pipeline for it. There's an office that you coordinate with, and you just it's not easy. There's policies in place. There's logistics in place, and you just do it, right? Versus when we first tried to approach that here, we got hold on, right? It's like, okay, we want to work with you on this, which I think is really the rewarding approach. But at the same time, we've never done this before, so it might take a little bit to set up. So I think sometimes there are those delays initially, mostly as a result of how young the research ecosystem is here. But I will say once that the system is set up, things do run pretty quickly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Which it makes sense, right? Because some of these things, there are certain hazards in research. Some things can be dangerous, and so you don't want to completely.
You're talking about nuclear waste.
That's right, exactly. You don't want uranium just hanging around, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that says something about Abu Dhabi and how open they are for all of us as young researchers. Come in here, do your thing. Let's do something together, and they're very open to that, and that's how you see all these facilities opening up here. The Genome Lab is something new as well. A lot of incredible things happening here.
Yeah.
So I heard that you recently got a $65 million grant. Mm-hmm. That's a nice amount of money. So why didn't you just take it and
just run? Run for an island. I wish. What, right? That would be lovely. So it's actually a really cool project. This is a project in collaboration with a number of other labs that are at MIT and the University of Colorado.
Nice. Okay.
And really what this builds on is some work that I had started a few years ago on developing ingestible electronic pills. And so I'll stop because I feel like it's worth explaining that a little bit. So generally we think of a oral pill as a vehicle by which we deliver drugs or chemicals, right? You swallow a pill, it gets degraded in your stomach, it kind of flutters apart and then gets absorbed by your body. And what we had tried to rethink at the time was, are there other forms of energy which we can deliver in an oral form, right? So instead of delivering chemical energy, could we deliver electrical energy? This works because our gastrointestinal tract, or our gut, has literally millions of neurons, the second largest number after our brain, that basically are responsible for coordinating everything from making us hungry to what we are hungry for, to making us thirsty, to making us full, as well as the actual processes which we don't think about, which is how we break down food, how we absorb it, where it goes. All this is mediated by all these neurons in our gut. Neurons don't talk using chemicals for the most part. They talk using electrical signals. And so whenever in the field of neuromodulation, whenever you want to stimulate neurons, you deliver electrical energy. So in a similar way, we said, well, maybe we can use a similar oral platform that instead of it having drugs, it has electronics. And instead of delivering medicine, we can deliver electrical energy. And what that had led to was some papers that we published last year, basically showing how delivery of electrical impulses to the stomach through these pills could regulate a variety of different hormones, right? And so that sort of was really exciting for us, right? These hormones have to do with hunger and metabolism. My first caveat is that we established a fantastic way by which we can make people more hungry. We're working on the less hungry side because I know that's the bigger deal.
We don't have a problem with being hungry.
But partly because of that, this grant came in from a new U.S. agency actually called ARPA-H. And so they gave us a ton of money over the next 4 to 5 years, the goal of which is to develop more advanced versions of these pills with the goal of getting them into patients by the end of 5 years, which is why the number is so high.
And how many years has it been?
It's been 1 next month.
Oh, wow.
So we're still in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
But it's really exciting to see such energy, I think, in the space because it really is, I'm biased, but I think a pretty revolutionary idea, which we assembled a team of engineers, clinicians, and probably most importantly, bioethicists to really rethink this because at the end of the day, you don't want patients to shun new technologies just because they weren't informed along the way. Right. And so part of that effort is in trying to understand how patients relate to new technology.
Right. And I think there's a lot of media hysteria with that as well. Be like, oh, are they putting a chip in me? We saw that in COVID, right? Yeah. We're like, oh no, the vaccine has a chip and they're tracking me and this and that. And
yeah.
So there's a lot of hysteria with that. That's obviously incorrect. So bioethics is definitely very, very important in that field. What about, so we talked a little bit about the gut. Any technologies for the brain with all these incurable diseases?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, neuro is probably the next wave of the diseases that we are going to be seeing. Right now, if you think about the biggest killers that we have in society, it's cardiovascular disease.
Right.
We have metabolic disease, things like diabetes and obesity. Neuro is up there and rising, right? As more and more people age. I think the biggest thing with neurologic diseases is that we don't really know why they happen.
Maybe we're just living longer than we used to.
Well, I mean, we know that's why we're seeing them. But over the last few years, we've just been seeing failure after failure of new drugs for like Alzheimer's.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you ask someone what is Alzheimer's, like why does it happen, we don't have an answer.
We have no idea.
Right. Yeah. We have theories, and so we have some projects in lab that try to get at some of those theories. Actually, you're going to find this one really interesting. One of the emerging theories of why some Alzheimer's might happen is that it actually starts in the mouth. And
I did hear about that.
Basically, there's a specific bacteria that causes gingivitis, P. gingivalis.
Yeah.
It secretes this enzyme called gingipain. Gingipain enters into your bloodstream. And what we've increasingly found in certain studies is that areas where you have deterioration in the brain, which is a telltale sign of Alzheimer's, also have increased levels of gingipain. So there's an open question about which one came first, but there's definitely a link there. And so, for example, we have one project in lab that tries to develop a screening tool by which we can at least try to screen people who have higher levels of gingipain in their blood. And one of the areas we're thinking of deploying it is actually dental offices, because we think that would make a lot of sense in terms of where people have their mouths looked at.
Yeah, because especially nowadays we're wearing occlusal guards, and there has been some recent advances in putting a chip in your occlusal guard because you're wearing it for like 8 hours when you're sleeping. So it like measures your pH in your mouth, it measures the bacterial load and all that, and maybe you can program it to look for that protein and get some research out of that. That's actually very, very, very interesting. Yeah. And nice collaboration that you and I can do.
That's right. Absolutely. That's a grant waiting to be written.
I love it. Give me some of that 65 million. All right. So that's a very interesting field, and I really hope it progresses from there. And I'm sure you heard about Elon Musk's new Neuralink.
hasn't?
What's your thoughts about that, being that this is literally your field?
So, it's interesting. When Neuralink first started, they were talking about brain implants. And a lot of the neuro field basically just rolled their eyes, because the implants they were describing are implants that we've had for years, right? You think about brain implants, just to give you a sense of scale, the most common ones that we implant for patients like those that have Parkinson's disease, they're called deep brain stimulation or DBS probes. Those are about the size of a chopstick. Right?
Wow.
So they're a couple of millimeters. And what you've seen is the field progress to getting implants that are as small as your hair, right? So like that's roughly 50, 100 microns. So that's 10 times, 20 times smaller. The challenge when you get really small with these implants is how you put them in. Because if you can imagine putting a piece of hair into Jell-O, there is no way to control where it goes. Right. And that's what Neuralink really innovated on, is not so much the actual device, but it was the insertion method of being able to put it in. They basically developed kind of something like a sewing machine, which threads it in one step at a time and being able to control where it goes. So
very interesting.
Kudos goes to them for a lot of the technology around implantation. I think Elon Musk is, whatever you think of him, is really good at this, which is popularizing technologies that already exist.
Yeah, and I think, and he's making everybody more aware.
Yes,
exactly. So he's
exactly.
bringing up with all these technology, like you said, they've been going on for so long, and he just put a whole new level of awareness to it.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, at the same time, you asked me. I actually asked my students this in one of my courses that's on Neuro-Engineering. I said, show of hands, who would get an implant if it made you run twice as fast, or if it made you, understand or read twice as fast, for example. And I think the question here is, are we treating a condition or are we enhancing and augmenting ability? Right. And there's a very strong ethical component about who should be getting it, who should not.
Right.
At the same time, we have things like glasses that I am lucky enough to wear. Without them, evolution would have killed me off years ago, right? I wouldn't have seen a tiger coming, and that's it. So that corrects something. Should we augment it? Like, where's the line? I think that's an ethical one that society still has to decide.
And I think that's happening currently, kind of at the same line. We had this conversation in episode 3 about Ozempic.
Yes.
And they're talking about what an incredible drug it is, but for people who need it.
Yes.
But now people who don't need it and they're doing it for the wrong reasons are taking it, and then they're becoming unhealthy.
Right.
So again, it's like the ethics of it.
Yes.
But obviously, trying to become Superman is a whole different thing. And I think I watched like a podcast regarding that and body augmentation, and they're saying basically that's the future. Like if you look at where we're gonna be in 100, 200 years, we're gonna be semi-electronic, semi-robotic in terms of, and we're seeing it now. Let's say somebody with an amputation, you're seeing an electric hand that's implanted into the brain, and that's kind of like an augmentation, right? Yeah. And we're seeing those sci-fi movies where, like you said, you don't need those augmentations and you're just an enhancement, and then they become villains. Yeah. Right? So yeah, we see that a lot, and it's a fine line, and we definitely need to concentrate a lot on ethics, on all those things, and especially like as doctors, our number one thing is do no harm, right?
Right.
And sometimes we're doing more harm than good. Yeah. So
exactly.
we gotta watch out for that, and that's why those policies are in place, right?
Yeah.
So what are you working on right now? What's your day-to-day like, and what's the research that you're currently involved in?
I think I am very fortunate to be in the position I am, because every day I get to go in, get told something about a project out of probably we have like 20 different projects in lab.
Oh,
and
wow.
I learned
You're working
something.
on 20?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
And I'll say that the really nice thing about research is that you start one project and then it sort of goes in different directions, right? And sometimes you don't know where those directions are going to be, but you sort of have to just go with where the data takes you,
and just go with it. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, one specific project that we have that I'm really excited about is again going back to ingestible pills. These not necessarily on the electronic side, but these are meant to interface with our gut and microbiome, right? So along with the millions of neurons, we have trillions of bacteria in our gut.
Right.
We know that it is very much linked to disease. However, we don't use it in clinical practice because we just don't understand it enough to say, this bug causes this, fix this bug, that disease will go away. And the reason we don't is because we don't have many good ways of actually sampling it. That's all we have is poop. So you take a piece of poop, which is not pleasant, and then you can culture the bacteria, and it will tell you a little bit about what the bugs are towards the end of your gut. And so what we are sort of working on is new structures and devices by which we can sample from the upper gut. And
which is technically more important.
I don't want to piss off the colorectal people, but
okay then.
I think it's more interesting, but that's a different story.
Okay.
I think that's where like appetite and metabolism happens. And so if we can play around in that area, I think that would be really cool. And that's something that we, hopefully the paper will come out this year, and we're hoping to, we have some IP around it that we're hoping to spin out. But like that is a great example of something that, I'm not a microbiologist, but this is sort of a bit of an unmet need. We think we had a good idea. It seems to be working pretty well, and so we're going with it. And the fun part is that the postdoc in lab is a really bright lady who's working on it. She is like a nanotechnologist by background, but somehow is now learning more and more about bacteria. And so I think it's really important in fields like this to just be open to learning about new fields at all times, you know?
Yeah, because you never know where the research takes you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about AI? Do you see AI going into your field?
I think AI is going to go everywhere. I think we're living through a little bit of a hype bubble.
Yeah.
But I don't think, unlike other hype bubbles, maybe like blockchain, I don't think this one is going to fade away completely. I think there's reason for it, right? Yeah. I think if you think healthcare in general, there's a lot of AI in terms of being able to have patients have access to care that they otherwise can't. Right? That's at the very basic level, right? If you live 3 hours away from a hospital and you're not sure whether you need to come in or not, and you have some sort of AI tool that can at least screen you, filter you, guide you, I think that's huge. Right? In hospitals that are overworked, can we have AI assist with decision-making along the way? Huge. I think the big question that's going to come up in healthcare with AI there is liability and who's responsible for an AI decision at the end of the day. Right. So that's, I think, some...
But my opinion is like maybe AI shouldn't be making those decisions, should be run through a human.
So augmenting, yeah.
Like running through a human. Okay, this is like the differential diagnoses, for example, and then the human kind of like accepts it or says, okay, no. But I've been seeing it a lot. Like even like they're testing Chat GPT with X-rays and scans and putting up the scan as like, what's the diagnosis? And it's like right on the money. It's like gets it like every single time. It's pretty incredible.
Because there's some dental AI stuff now going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of dental AI. It's same thing with X-rays.
one of them or something like that?
Yeah. There's a lot going on, especially with X-ray diagnoses. You put up a radiograph and it tells you where the cavity is, and so it's still, I think, very little AI in dentistry. They include AI in the dental chairs, so they know how often is the chair being utilized, especially for in academic settings. I know they implemented it in Columbia University, so they can know how many hours the patient's been sitting in the chair and how long each procedure is taking, what procedure is taking what time, so they can make things more efficient for the dental student and for the patients. So it's in there, but I think still preliminary. Yeah. So what's next for you?
What's next? I think among a lot of things, the part I'm excited about is, we talk a big game about translation, but at the end of the day, the real assessment of that is actually doing it. And, I've had some success in the past to different levels. So, in terms of being able to spin stuff out. During COVID, we completely pivoted. And this was a few months before I joined NYU and I was still at MIT. And I worked with a couple other people to develop ventilator splitters, right? That was like an unmet need during COVID. Ventilators can save you. They can also kill you, which is why the recommendation is never split a ventilator across multiple patients. But it was urgent times. And so as an engineer, we're like, well, this is kind of like you taking a shower at home and then someone else turning on the water and your water getting lower, right? So there's a way to regulate it and be safe about it. And that was a very untraditional thing because we forewent any sort of IP or patent. We published it. We sort of put up a website. It was a
wild west back then.
Because we wanted to get it out there, right?
Exactly.
And so we ended up raising a little bit of money towards getting it to low resource settings where this might be helpful, right? And that was really rewarding to be able to see work that you do in lab going out there. I think we are at the stage now where 4 years into starting my lab here, we have a couple of things that are, I would say, at similar stages of development. And so really what I'm looking forward to in the next 1 to 2 years is being able to push those out. And this is where it's going to get interesting, pushing them out as being the first people to do that in an environment like Abu Dhabi or UAE, where this hasn't been done before.
Right.
So will it come with headaches? I'm sure it will. But at the same time, I think I'm looking forward to the ride. I think it's going to be fun.
I think that's a nice goal that you set yourself for.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for coming. This has been an incredible conversation. Very interesting to see how, for myself as a clinician, I just get the cherry on top, and then seeing how the cherry gets made is a whole another field. And we thank you for that as a researcher.
Of course.
And thank you for coming in. If somebody would like to collaborate with you or reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
We can put my email somewhere, but honestly, if you Google my name, the very first link will be the website.
Perfect.
And just please reach out.
Yeah, and I'll put all the information, all the articles we talked about, we'll be putting them on the captions. If you guys have any comments or anything like that, please feel free to comment on down below, and we will respond, and we'll have Professor Ramadi respond as well. So again, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
For many more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.